of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee held on the 24th of September 2024. Councillor Buchanan? I'm not seeing you present. Councillor Donnelly is present. I have apologies from Councillor Fulton, and I can see that Councillor Dewar has joined as a substitute. Councillor Gowland has joined online. Councillor Handybode? No. Councillor Johnson-Dempsey has also joined online. Also present today is Councillor Kerr, and Councillor Lockhart has joined online. We also have Councillor McDougall in attendance. Councillor Convery is also present today, as is the Chief Executive and a number of officers, as well as colleagues from Audit Scotland. And I'll pass back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth Ann. And so start with item 1, which is a declaration of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest to make? No indications. Thank you. Item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. I'll move the minutes of the 25th of June. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair.
Thanks very much. Moving on to our monitoring items. Item 3A, our External Auditors Report 23-24. Pages 11 to 66 on your papers, and I'll invite John Boyd, Audit Director, to speak to the report, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon, members. The report you have in front of you is our External Audit Report for the year ended 31st of March 2024. The report has been prepared in accordance with the Code of Audit Practice, and outlines the key conclusions and findings from our external audit work for the year. It covers 2 key aspects: the financial statements audit, including the audit of the Council and its group, as well as our wider scope responsibilities, reporting in areas of financial management, financial sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, use of resources to improve outcomes, as well as reporting on the Council's statutory responsibilities in relation to best value. If I just touch briefly on the financial statements audit, we intend, and the key message is really we intend to issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. Essentially, that's a clean bill of health in terms of the annual accounts, that they are free from material misstatement. During the course of the audit, there were some adjustments made to the financial statements. In the draft report we had presented to you at the time of writing, we hadn't finalised those. There was only one material adjustment, and it was actually a technical adjustment relating to the Council's group position. And it was the accounting for the reserves, the pension reserves, which in the South Lanarkshire Leisure isn't actually technically what you would class as a usable reserve, and essentially it's a reallocation from usable to unusable reserve. That was the only material adjustment to the financial statements, and generally the accounts and supporting working papers were of a good standard. In terms of our wider scope responsibilities, the report highlights a number of key aspects, predominantly highlighting the financial challenges that the Council faces, noting the wider pressures, particularly around inflationary pressures on pay and non-pay costs, as well as demand on services. The Council, similar to other local authorities, faces these challenges along with pressures on available public resources. However, we have highlighted that the Council continues to demonstrate sound financial management and has reserve strategy in place to address these financial pressures. We've concluded that the Council has satisfactory arrangements in place to demonstrate best value. However, I've highlighted that there could be an opportunity to enhance some of the strategic focus around that. Our report also summarises the findings from our thematic review on workforce planning, which I know is a separate report presented to the Council. but highlights some of the key aspects of workforce planning at the local authority, and highlighting opportunities to have a more strategic focus around some of that work. In terms of just finally, in terms of key aspects of the annual report, really just to confirm our audit independence from the council. The audit fee remained the same as that prepared within the annual audit plan, and there were no changes arising during the course of the audit. Finally, I would just like to pass on my thanks to the council, predominantly the finance team, for all their help and support throughout the audit, and Jackie and Lorraine's assistance in completing the audit work. While it has been a challenge in terms of meeting the statutory sign-off dates, as you'll be aware, a number of local authorities are facing significant challenges around completion of the audit by the end of September timescale. So it's a testament to the finance team around the work that they've undertaken to allow us to do that. Following the approval of accounts, we would look to essentially finalise and sign off the annual audit, and we'll finalise the annual audit report and publish on our website as soon as possible. But happy to take any questions on the annual audit report or the audit itself.
Thanks very much, John. I would echo that. Thanks to the finance team as well for the work done and getting this in such good time this year. So done. Do we have any questions for John or other officers that are here? Hands up. Anyone online? Okay, so I'll maybe ask my question then. So I think this is probably relatively easy to answer. So on page 52.117, it was noting that there's a decrease on the prior year's results against the indicators, the measurement indicators of 51%. I was just saying at first glance it appears to be a high figure. Is there a summary explanation for this change? And I do note there are actions to address this. Jackie, who's best placed to? Yeah, Lorraine.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Yeah, I think it's quite difficult to say anything in summary about this because our position is relative to other councils. So as they fluctuate across the years, because of a number of factors, it can be just illustrative of where we sit in that ranking. We could, in effect, improve our performance in absolute terms, but if other councils have improved by more than us, then it puts us down the ranking. It's probably worth noting just in that indicator in particular you're talking about that the difference referenced here is a drop from 51% of indicators being better than Scottish average to 46% in 22-23, so it's a difference of 5 percentage points, and it's across, I think, 3 indicators, so relatively speaking it is quite a small change.
Okay, thanks for that clarification, Lorraine, that's really helpful. Any other questions, Mary?
Thank you, Chair. Point 122 notes that 30% of reports were submitted out with the timescale for the Children's Reporter. This appears to be quite a serious issue. Is there an explanation as to why this occurred? I appreciate action is being taken to address this going forward, but will this be closely monitored this year to prevent recurrence in future years, in much the same way as Fusion will provide early warnings on other matters? Thank you.
Lorraine?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, very much so. The Head of Children and Families is acutely aware of the issue and is looking to monitor it moving forward. The reason for the delay in some of these reports has been attributed to staff vacancies. They have had turnover of staff in those areas, but they are actively recruiting to address that. And they've also had an increased level of demand. And they're looking at a single assessment framework to try and streamline the process moving forward. Information that I've got from social work already is suggesting that in the quarterly reporting that they do, as a matter of course, we are seeing improvements into 24-25 already.
You happy with that, Mary?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. There was one other point I just wanted to raise, and I think we've been speaking about it for a while. It was the ongoing support for elected members. And I think there's a recognition that, you know, people in the committee aren't specialists in these matters. You know, finance, risk, all the, you know, all the important things we talk about here. And I know that there was an extensive training needs analysis carried out in March, because I think we all replied to that. So that was, I think that's been a good piece of work, but we've not seen the results of that yet. And it was just, I was kind of questioning in my head, is this actually implemented, you know, at the moment? Because normally for me, implemented is it's there, it's done. So I just wanted to know if anybody would want to comment on that.
Thanks, Chair. I'll pick that one up. The training needs assessment has been carried out, and you're right in terms of that's us marking that as implemented. In terms of the programme of training that will come off the back of that, that's something that we expect to share with members over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So hopefully we'll be able then to make sure that members are able to access the training that they're wanting to. Thanks.
Okay, that's great, because I think we've talked about it for a while. I think that's a good thing to do. So thank you very much. So can I, in that case, is there any other questions coming in? No? Okay. Okay, in that case, I'll ask to move the report and thank John for that report. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
And ask the committee to agree the report. Thank you very much. So moving on to item 3B, which is the External Auditor's Report 2324 as it relates to South Lanarkshire Council Charitable Trusts. Again from Audit Scotland, and I'll invite Mark Ferris, Senior Audit Manager, to speak to this, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, thank you, Chair. This is just a short cover letter outlining the fact that the audit is now complete, and we've got the assurances and included the independent auditor's report, and we'll get responses from management in due course. And
excuse me, Mark, would you mind putting your microphone a bit closer? Sorry, it might be just me that's calling.
Is that better now, Chair? Yes. So yeah, this is just a short cover letter for the charitable trusts. There's more detail included within the actual annual audit report that's already gone to you, but this is just giving assurances that the work is now substantially complete, and that the accounts are on approval, will be signed off later this week. So again, there's nothing else to, I think the letter is self-evident, so there's nothing else to bring to your attention.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Do we have any questions for Mark or anyone else in the room? Don't think we have any questions for you. Thank you. You're off easy on that one. Okay, in that case, I'll move the report and ask for it to be seconded.
I'll second that, Chair.
And for the Chair to ask the committee to agree the report, which seems agreed. Okay, now we come to the important stuff. Not that that wasn't important, but the ones that are items for decision today, and why we've got Councillor Convery and our CEO with us. So it's our audited annual accounts, which is another huge piece of work that's been delivered. So I'll ask Lorraine, our Finance Manager, to speak to this report, please. Lorraine.
Thank you, Chair. Item 4 then is the report that looks to seek the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee to consider the audited accounts for approval and taking account of the auditor's view this afternoon. So you've heard from John and Mark respectively in terms of the Council's accounts and the charities accounts, and they've given you an update on the audit itself and their view on the accounts. So in terms of this paper, it notes in section 4 the position is a clean audit certificate for the Council's accounts following the 3-month audit period, with relatively minor presentational changes applied from the unaudited version. And you should have a copy of these accounts in your email box. For the accounts of the remaining charities that the Council has, these are detailed in section 5, and again a clean audit certificate following the audit of the accounts. As I said, members have got a copy of the accounts for the Council and for the charities, and I'm really just looking to refer members back to the recommendations in section 2 and ask that the Council accounts for 23-24 and the charitable accounts have received a clean audit certificate, that the audited South Lanarkshire Council accounts and the charitable accounts for 23-24 be approved for signature, that the external auditor's report will be referred onwards to South Lanarkshire Council for information be noted, and finally that the audited accounts for 23-24 will be available on the Council's website moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine, and I should have said Head of Finance there. Apologies. So, does anyone have any questions for Lorraine on the accounts? No questions raised. Okay, in that case, I'll ask the report to be moved. and
I'll
seconded.
second that, Chair.
And they can go forward with the recommendations as outlined by Lorraine. Don't know if the Chief Executive and Deputy Leader want to leave at the moment. You're welcome to do so. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 5 in the agenda, which is another item for decision, and this is the 2022 National Fraud Initiative exercise. And I'll pass over to Yvonne Douglas, our Audit and Compliance Manager, to speak to this report, please. Yvonne.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report that sets out the outcomes of the 2022 NFI exercise for the Council, which we concluded at the end of March. And just because of the timing, it also allows us to set out the outcomes of the overall exercise across Scotland that was set out in Audit Scotland's report that was published in August 2024. So it's quite useful in being able to see the Council's position set aside the Scotland-wide position. So just by way of a reminder, the NFI exercise takes a number of predefined data sets from public sector bodies across the UK and it matches these. Now, when we get a match, it can be an indicator of a fraud, so it's passed back to the public sector bodies to investigate. Before we progress with the matches, we need to risk assess them, and you can see that from the numbers that come back to us, that we need to go through that exercise to get it down to a manageable number for us to investigate. So we investigate those that are deemed to be high risk, and we then call them our target number of cases. So just for your information, Appendix 1, we've listed all the areas that matched, and at Appendix 2, we've given you a breakdown of the number of matches that we got back. Within the report at Table 4.7, we summarise the outcome from investigating the matches, and there's more detail in Appendix 3 if you want to see how we get from the starting position through to the very finished position. Match areas are not always consistent from one exercise to another, so maybe that's worth bearing in mind if you look at one exercise compared to another. We're not always comparing like-for-like data sets. I think the key point for the committee to note is that our outcomes are relatively low. That's a pattern we've seen in recent exercises and has continued for the 2022 exercise. So although we got 28,000 matches to start with, and we then looked at over 10,500, you'll see that we identified only 300 fraud or errors with a value of around 108,000. Section 5 of the report then moves on to deal with the Audit Scotland report on the exact same exercise, but this time giving you the Scotland-wide perspective. So we were one of 127 bodies that participated across Scotland, and the overall outcome from the exercise across Scotland was £21.5 million. And there's a breakdown of how that £21.5 million is arrived at Table 5.4. When we work through this exercise, we do liaise with external audit. We do use their checklists. We've completed those checklists ahead of starting the next exercise. And just for completeness, they're also attached as appendices to this report. So you'll see 5, 6 and 7 are the various checklists that are passed to us by Audit Scotland, and we've completed those, and the committee are able to go through those in a bit of detail if they want, but there's nothing of significance that I really need to bring to your attention, and nothing that we would significantly change in terms of our approach, other than to perhaps refine the number of matches that we look at in future exercises. If I had to summarise the NFI exercise for the benefit of the committee, I would say that it's good because it helps us identify fraud and error. It no doubt acts as a fraud deterrent, and it does form a part of the Council's anti-fraud culture. As I alluded to there, one of the things that we are looking at is trying to balance the relatively low outcomes with the amount of time that we invest in the exercise. And that's something that we're considering what our approach will be in the exercise that's just about to start. And again, we'll liaise with external audit to get their views on what our thoughts on the matter are. I think that's probably the main points to bring to your attention. As I say, we're just about to start the next exercise. The timetable for that's attached at Appendix 5, and by the end of this month we'll be extracting data to upload and begin the process again. In terms of this report then, the recommendations are at 2.1. So there's 3 of those. Firstly, we're asking that you note the Council's own outcomes from the exercise, that you note the Scotland-wide position is set out in Audit Scotland's report, and you note the action at Appendice 8, which is a very routine action around taking refresher training ahead of any NFI exercise, which we'd always do in terms of good practice as we bring new people into the process, but also just as a reminder to those that participated in it in the past as well. And that concludes that report, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Any questions in the room for Yvonne on the report? Anything online? No? I'll just make an observation that I made last year and kind of ask a little bit of a question. I mean, when you look at the numbers, you know, you're looking at out of the original 28,000 matches provided by the central body, it then gets reduced to 10,700 on the basis of a kind of risk-based approach that's agreed. And the final outcome of that is only 317 confirmed as valid fraud errors with the value that you've outlined. And it just seems to me that it's a huge amount of work that needs to be undertaken for what appear to be a lot of false matches. And I know it's not your fault. So my kind of question was, is there a feedback mechanism? And there might be reasons for this that I'm just not aware of. But is there a feedback mechanism to the central body to say, why are your matches so rubbish? What are they doing to improve it? I know Audit Scotland are saying to us, you know, this is how you become more efficient and all that, but is there any way they could become more efficient and, you know, improve the matching? Is there a feedback loop and kind of continuous improvement sort of thing?
Yeah, I'll just come back on that point. We've worked really closely with Audit Scotland. In fact, they've been really helpful in terms of some of the queries that have come up during the exercise, just clarifying what our approach would be. And we do informally feedback, you know, our concerns around the matches and the amount of refinement. I think it's a point that's understood, and they look at every exercise in terms of how they can improve the position. We do get quite a lot of help in the 28,000 reduced to 10,000 as a result of the risk assessment that's done pre-coming to the council. So there's already quite a bit of work to refine. But as you can see, when it still comes to us, it comes as a significant number of matches to be looked at. And I think we're looking at how we then take that and refine, hoping that the next exercise might produce a more refined position initially. But if it doesn't, that's the bit that we're looking to try and take a wee bit more ownership on going forward in terms of how we can refine the number that we look at, because it's a significant number of resources that are involved. And I think the important thing for me is we're not seeing significant control issues coming out of it. So there's not the errors that point to systems or processes that are failing, which is one of the main gains in this, is that not only do you identify an error, you identify an opportunity to improve how you go about. We're not really seeing that. We're identifying isolated issues which we deal with and we seek recovery. But I think we're trying to get a more proportionate way forward, and we'll look forward to working with Audit Scotland to get a position that they're satisfied that that approach is also proportionate.
Thanks, Yvonne. I appreciate you dealing with a data set that's out with your control to a large extent there. Any other questions for Yvonne? You usually get questions on this report.
Councillor Lockhart.
Councillor Lockhart, yep. Thank you, Councillor Lockhart.
Thanks, Chair. Just a general question. Single person discount. There's a bit in the press at the moment about the Labour Party and some of their proposed changes, one of which is certainly it was moved that maybe they would look at applying or disapplying the single person's discount. Now, can you let me know, is that in the gift of the council, in the gift of the Scottish Government, or is that something that is controlled from Westminster?
To be honest, I would need to take advice on that, and I can do that and come back to you, but I couldn't tell you the answer to that question at this point in time, but I'm happy to seek a response and come back.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks, Councillor Lockhart. We'll get an answer for the committee on that question. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. In which case, thanks for the report and another huge piece of work from the fraud team, the audit team rather. So I would like to move the report and be looking for a seconder.
It gives me pleasure to second the report. Thank you.
And I'll ask the committee to approve the report. So, thank you. So moving on to items for noting. So item 6, financial resilience and sustainability. And this is another report that will be talked to by Lorraine O'Hagan, our Head of Finance. Thanks, Lorraine.
Thank you. So this agenda item 6 is a new paper which focuses on the Council's financial resilience and sustainability. The intention is that this paper demonstrates the resilient position of the Council, taking into account a number of pieces of information, including our balance sheet position, the level of our reserves, our awareness of the key risk areas in the budget, and importantly, the approach we take to financial planning and our budget strategy. Given the financial challenges that we have to manage and the budget risk areas that we are having to deal with and monitor as we go forward, and also the fact that this is a key council risk, one of the council's top 10 risks, we felt it appropriate that we bring this paper to yourselves as the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Forum. Committee, sorry. So section 4 of the report then focuses on the financial position moving forward, which, as you know, is very challenging. The 3-year strategy that we have prepared alongside our transformation programme is a key element of our being able to demonstrate our financial management approach. In terms of the detailed information on resilience and some of the indicators we've analysed, those are provided in the framework in Appendix 1, and a summary is provided in Section 5, and I'll just take you through the high-level summary then. So the framework demonstrates the Council's financial resilience in a number of ways, including the Council holding an uncommitted reserve in case of emergency, the review of the balance sheet that we've undertaken. We have a balance of earmarked reserves with a plan on how we will use these in a managed way in line with our medium-term financial strategy. And we're aware of our exposure to risk in some key budget areas of spend and income. And again, we acknowledge these in our budget strategy by undertaking horizon scanning as we go through the years. The local government benchmarks are also included in the framework for your information and as a guide that we will monitor over time. As I mentioned in one of my responses to your query earlier, it's sometimes difficult to compare yourself to other organisations, but if you look at your own performance over a period of time, that gives a better flavour of how things are looking for us as an organisation. Some of the areas of the benchmarks look at the level of unearmarked reserve and also the year-end outturn position. And for last year-end and previous year-ends, we've got a break-even position, which is a positive outcome. This is a paper for noting, and in the recommendations, if I can ask the committee, note the financial plan and the resilience framework that we've provided in Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lorraine. Interesting report. Do we have any questions in the room or online for this one? No. Do you want to ask a question, maybe? Okay.
Thank you. It's more an observation. Noting that no assumptions made in relation to council tax, the 77.3 million budget gap that we have and will face, assuming that there's, I'm assuming that there'll be, are there any real potential increase to settlement over the next 3 years as a result of the new Westminster government promising change and an end to austerity at their Labour Party conference? How are we, local authorities are going bankrupt in England? Is that going to happen here in Scotland? And with the promise of no austerity, with any increased settlement in England, I would assume that would be getting passed under the consequentials to Scotland.
Any comment?
I probably can't answer a few of the subtleties around your questioning there in terms of the political aspects, but what I can provide you with is a statement of fact, I suppose. The settlement assumptions we used back in June were based on the previous Scottish Government medium-term financial strategy. And we are expecting a revised medium-term strategy in October time. From our perspective, our local government settlement is still expected in December, so we need to wait until we get that information before we can do anything further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Lockhart.
Right. Yes, it's a sort of extension of Mary's question, really. I wonder, would it be useful, maybe not, to put some assumptions based on council tax increases of, say, 3, 5, 8% or something like that? Because, I mean, they're going to have to happen. And rather than scaring us completely, would it not be sensible to at least put some of those sort of numbers in purely as an estimate, if you like, to see the size of the problem, depending on the different levels of raising of council tax?
I'll let Lorena and was it
I'll take
the answer,
that,
Jackie?
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Lockhart. In terms of increasing council tax, that will be a political decision when the budget is set. What we have done as part of our budget strategy paper is remind members for every 1% that is increased in council tax, if that decision was taken, how much money would be realised from that. So that information is available, and it's just a simple calculation. If you took 2% or 3% or 4%, it would be a multiplier of that. So that information is available, but it is for members to make that decision around council tax ultimately when we set the budget. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I think that's the standard approach when we go through the budget process, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Lockhart, and thanks, Jackie. Any other questions? No. In which case, thanks, Lorraine, for the report. And I'll ask for the report to be moved for the report to be noted. And
I'll second that, Chair. Thank you.
ask the committee to agree to note the report. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, our internal audit activity, our sort of interim reporting that we do as at 30th of August 2024, pages 103 to 108 on your pack. And I'll ask Yvonne to speak to this again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an update with the progress that we're making with the internal audit plan that was approved by the committee at the outset of the year. So it covers the period 1st June through to 30th of August. There's a couple of appendices attached to the report. Appendix 1 lists all the assignments we completed in that period, and Appendix 2 gives you the key performance indicators as at the end of August. In terms of the indicators, they're not significant at this time of year, although 75% of the plan is in progress. There's not much has reached draft or final report stage, which is where most of these indicators sit. At this stage, there's nothing of significance of particular concern, but we're making good progress, as you can see, with progressing the plan. For completeness, we bring to members audit reports that come to the Glasgow City Region City Deal Cabinet. You'll be familiar with seeing these in previous reports. So we've captured the ones that were issued in August 2024, and that's set out in section 5 to the report. You'll see at 5.1 there's a hyperlink. If you click on that, it takes you through to the actual reports, and you can read them in full if you wish. The report here captures just a very high-level summary, basically telling you that there's not anything of significance. It was positive messages and assurances that were coming in both reports, one on the assurance framework and the second one being the annual report for 23-24. So in terms of this paper, we're simply asking that progress is noted. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Do we have any questions for Yvonne in that report? Seen any hands in the room? Anyone online? Okay, thank you very much, Yvonne. I'll ask for the move for the report to be noted.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks very much, and for the committee to note the report. Okay, moving on to, again, item 8, another report for Yvonne to speak to, the Fraud Statistics Annual Report 2023-24.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents the fraud statistics for the year to March 24 and gives you the comparison to March 2023. We're using the same data set, so you can compare both figures. They are comparable. In terms of the key information, it's sitting within the tables, and you'll see there's 3 of those within the report. The first one at 4.3, one at 4.6, and the last one at 4.7, and I'll just briefly take you through those tables. So the first one sets out our fraud caseload, so it shows you how many cases we had at the start of the year. It notes that we added 101 and we closed 66 of those, so at the end of the year we had 171 cases with a value of 44,000. The second table at 4.6 then gives you a breakdown of the closed cases, so the line that's in bold in table 1, the 66 cases closed with a value of 58,000. There's a breakdown of that In Table 2 at 4.6, in terms of whether it was founded, unfounded, or whether there was insufficient information to reach a conclusion. And the final table then takes all of those that were founded and gives you a breakdown of the source. So external relates to things where the fraud has been committed by a party out with the council. Internal, where it relates to an employee of the council, and benefits is obviously self-explanatory. I think probably one thing you might notice looking at the table is that there's an increase, and there's a pattern of an increase in terms of our fraud caseload. What I would say is when we look at it, we don't see any unusual patterns or trends. And what we're seeing with the gradual increase in cases and referrals is it's really just taken us back to a similar position to what we were pre-pandemic. So the pandemic had a big impact in terms of the way that fraud was reported to us, was investigated and closed down, and what we're really seeing now in these statistics is a more comparable position to pre-2020. In terms of anti-fraud work, the NFI plays part of it, so the report refers to that, but given that that was a separate report in the agenda, there's not really anything new that I need to bring out within this report for the committee's attention. So in terms of the recommendations, we're simply asking that the content of the report is noted. Thank you.
Thanks again, Yvonne. Do we have any questions in the room for Yvonne or online? No, getting off easy today. I always find these reports really interesting, but it's possibly sad. Okay, so in that case, thank you, Yvonne, and I'll move for the report to be noted.
I'll second that, Chair.
And for the committee to note the report. Thank you very much. So moving on to item 9 on our agenda, our year-end insured risk report 23-24 on pages 113 to 122 of your pack. And I'll ask Scott Dunsmore, our insurance and risk management manager, to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report covers the number and cost of claims that we're seeing coming through. It focuses on claims for the last 2 years, but we also look at back over the last 5 in a bit less detail. The report also covers actions that we're taking to mitigate against claims. Under the background section of the report, we're just highlighting there that we've taken an increase in our self-insured excess on our property insurance policy. So the main excess on that policy is now £500,000. That's up from £100,000 previously. And the storm and flood uninsured excess is now £1 million, up from £500,000. The reason that we've done that is it was really to avoid significant premium increases that we faced during the tender last year. The insurers were putting down those increases to storm and flood claims. So we have carefully looked at our past claims experience to estimate future claims costs that we will take on the self-insured losses to help manage the expenditure and taking on that additional risk. Section 4 of the report provides an overview of the last 5 years' claims. And again, you'll see there that we've had a total of 886 claims across all classes of cover. So that's liability, motor and property insurance claims. Those claims numbers are in line with average for the last 5 years. The claims costs for 23-24 are estimated at £3.5 million. So that is quite significantly above the average, around £1 million above the average for the last 5 years. The main reason for that is that we were hit with a number of storm claims over last winter, and the estimated damage to council properties as a result of those storms is coming in at £800,000. Inflation, increased cost of materials and car parts and car repairs are also impacting upon our claim values. Section 6 to 8 of the report provides some of the key findings from the analysis on the 23-24 claims, and I'll just kind of go through some of those key points. So our combined liability claims, we've had 415 claims in for last year with a value of just under £1.4 million. We have seen, sorry, I should mention first, the claims numbers have come down there from the previous year by 6%, but we have seen an increase in costs of around 43%, and that is due to more high-value injury and property damage claims coming through. On the motor claims, we have had 394 claims for 23-24. Those are valued at just under £700,000. One fewer claim than the year before, and our claims costs there have gone up by 11%. That is, again, as I mentioned, at least in part due to the increased cost of repairs on vehicles. Property claims is covered further into the report, so we've had 77 claims with a total value of £1.5 million. And as I said, the main reason for the increase from the previous year there is down to the storm claims. We've also seen a spike in house fire claims. So moving on, in terms of mitigation against claims, you will see at 7.7 in relation to our motor insurance claims, a driver behaviour training programme has recently been launched for our drivers. We did have a similar one for managers in place, but we're looking for all council drivers now to go through this training course, which covers actions that can be taken to reduce the likelihood of being involved in an accident. Some hard-hitting videos in there around dangers of distractions, country roads, tailgating, and all the other bad behaviours we tend to develop. Other actions to mitigate insurance hotspots are covered at section 9 of the report. So following a health and safety training review, an action plan has been prepared to mitigate against liability claims. We also seek feedback from resources on lessons learned following incidents, and we continue to raise awareness to tenants around fire prevention and how to avoid burst pipes, some of the big claims that we've seen coming through. Those articles are published in South Lanarkshire View, and we also promote our tenants' contents insurance scheme for tenants where cover can be bought from as little as £12 a year. So that cover can help our tenants when they suffer these losses. Just to conclude, the financial implications section of the report, you will see that for 23-24, the total cost of loss, which covers the cost of insurance claims and premiums, is coming in at £5.3 million. In comparison, for 22-23, the figure was £4.5 million. So that concludes the report. We're asking that the committee note the content of this report, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Scott. Do we have any questions in the room or online? Councillor Lockhart.
Hello, just an interesting question. I see one of the claims is finance and corporate. What does that mean? Can you explain what it was?
Councillor, offhand, I don't have the detail of that.
Excuse me, can I just ask Councillor Kerr to switch her mic off, please? Thank you. It's something to do with the video. Sorry, Scott.
Yeah, just coming back on that point, I don't have to hand the individual detail behind that individual case. And to be honest, we can't actually go into the detail of individual claims at the committee. So I'd be happy to maybe come back on that one, Chair.
Okay.
Right, okay. I mean, I'm just interested to know what lies behind it, because finance and corporate insurance claim would indicate there was fraud in there. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm wrong to suppose anything, but it's just an interesting one, and it's the first time it's occurred, so I just thought it might be of interest.
Okay, I think Scott's going to get some more information on that. What can be released on that one?
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Lockhart. Councillor Kerr, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, just wanted to go back on that point you raised about insurance for council tenants. If you could just go over that again. I just heard the tail end of it, and I thought if you could just explain that a wee bit further for me. £12 a year I heard mentioned. I thought that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, so it's a tenant's contents insurance policy that would cover the contents, and the same as you buying your own contents insurance for your property. So going back to the burst pipes that we had a number of years ago, there's quite a lot of tenants did not have that contents insurance in place, and basically when the floods happened, they had no cover. So when I mentioned the £12 figure, we've got currently 2,500 tenants in that scheme. The figure I mentioned of £12 a year would be for the minimum level of cover that can be bought, which is for £4,000 a year. But we're trying to encourage as best we can that tenants take out that cover so that they have it there in the event of, you know, a fire or a flood or another significant loss.
Okay, good. That sounds excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Any other questions? Okay, I'll have my question then. I suppose it's a bit of an unintended consequence. Sorry?
I'll come in after you.
Right. Unintended consequences when you see, you know, climate change affecting storms and, you know, other things which I'm just about to mention. So I did want to ask about the actions being taken to raise awareness with tenants re fire prevention and reduction of risks of burst pipes, and have we any way of knowing if people are engaging with these kind of educational exercises, especially if they're elderly and if it's online? You know, how do we reach people to raise awareness? I mean, worrying that house fires are going up, obviously, as well as burst pipes.
Yeah, just to come back on that one, I think in terms of engagement, I think one thing I can kind of come back on is the engagement in terms of increased uptake on that tenants content scheme, which I spoke about. So there are about 2,500 employees in the scheme currently. In terms of engagement on the advice that we give out on fire prevention and burst pipes, is probably a more difficult one to gauge. There are tenant participation groups and local housing forums, so I could possibly take that one back and engage with Housing and Technical Resources and maybe get some feedback from you on that. But I think for me the most important thing is that we just keep on banging the drum and try to get that message out there. Again, we'll be looking to do the one about the burst pipes coming up for the coming into winter months again, just to raise awareness.
Okay, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that, because I mean, obviously there's kind of pockets of people that are less, you know, that are more digitally excluded, if you like, but and it's a worrying thing. I did want to make mention of the recent removal of the winter fuel allowance from pensioners who don't qualify for pension credit. Knowing that many of these will be on a low income, given that UK pensions are actually the lowest in Europe. There's probably an increased risk of burst pipes in pensioner homes. I don't know if any further targeting advice can be done on that. I know about the campaign to increase pension credits, increase uptake, which is laudable, great to do, but there are many that won't be eligible. And my point about that is that many of those will be struggling on low incomes and may face heat or eat situations, in which case you're going to then end up with burst pipes, hungry pensioners, as well as burst pipes. I hadn't even thought of the burst pipe aspect of it and additional costs and, you know, misery.
Again, just maybe coming back on that, I think that's a fair point, and I think if we probably found that last time round that when we had the high numbers of burst pipes, part of that may have been down to people not putting their heating on. In terms of the advice I said before, it's more a sort of global thing that we would tend to do. So I would maybe need to pick that up with Housing and Technical Resources again if we were to try and do anything more targeted.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate all the problems can't come to your door, but yeah, we just wanted to make that point. Any other questions, Mary? Did you want to ask something?
Yeah, and I'm actually having a wee bit difficulty hearing, so see my question, if it's something that you've covered in the report, Colin, I apologise. Okay, and you can tell me that. What it is, it's going back into the house insurance situation. Are we liaising with our housing department in terms of tenants taking up the house insurance? I know I had a disaster where the roof was blown off my house, and if I hadn't had contents insurance and building insurance, I would have been one very sorry girl, because I wouldn't have had any cover. And I think we've got a duty of care as a council to keep raising that issue for people to take it up, because if people don't take the insurance out, they are going to be really sorely sorry. Where I know some of my council tenants were really, really hard done by with the burst pipes last year. Not it was last year, wasn't it? Roughly 2 years. Were really, really struggled, and it was because they hadn't taken insurance out and weren't covered as well. So I'd like your overview on that and how we can increase the uptake.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of things. We have the insurance company encourage us to, promote the scheme as best we can. So I mentioned the adverts that are in the view that we do, but I know on top of that, housing do actively encourage tenants, new tenants coming in, and through these participation groups and forums, they actively encourage people to take that out. And I just echo your comments there about the difficulties where people do not have that insurance, and they're literally losing everything they own if they don't, when we have these big losses.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. Put you through the mill there, I think, Scott. Thank you, handled well. Okay, if we've got no other, we do have another question. Sorry, Councillor Lockhart, apologies.
Yeah, sorry, me again. It's a slightly different angle to the insurance, and I'd like to try and understand the difference, if you like, between the personal insurance that you're asking them to take out and the insurance that the council has if and when something goes wrong. A very simple example is one of my constituents had a big problem as a result of, if you like, council work. A car park which previously had not flooded suddenly, because of the heavy rain, started flooding her garden quite badly. In fact, a couple of gardens, 2 or 3 gardens. And she put in a claim for the council, if you like, to come and sort out the mess in her garden, because it was caused, as she put it, by effectively the work that was done in the car park above. And the company Gallagher and Bassett basically, I think, turned down the claim for the council, saying that it was, I don't call it an act of God, but because the additional rain that we have now been suffering recently. And her garden is definitely fairly badly hit, and yet she can't get, I believe, any money for it, probably because she hasn't got her own insurance, but the council seems to be denying it as well, or Gallagher and Bassett are denying it for the council. Can you throw any light on how this works?
Yeah, again, at the committee, Councillor, we're unable to sort of talk about specific claims, but just in a more general sense, the point that you raise around how that type of claim and what sort of claim you're talking about there, within the report you'll see that we've spoken about property insurance claims. So that would be a buildings insurance policy that we have for all council properties. Tenants are required to insure their own contents. The type of claim that you're referring to that's been submitted against the council would be a liability claim, and for that claim to be successful, it would need to be established that the council's been negligent. But as I say, I can't really talk about the specifics of that particular case.
Just a question then is, how does she take it on if she wants to? What does she do?
I'd be happy to come back separately, Councillor, and maybe talk you through any appeals process.
Okay, thank you. That'll do.
No worries.
Yep, I think
Thank
that's
you.
a kind of offline question. Thank you, Councillor Lockhart. Anyone else want to ask any questions of Scott? Okay, thank you very much. And I will ask for the report to be, I'll move the report, in fact, and ask for it to be seconded.
I'll second that, Chair.
I'm asking the committee to note the report. So moving on to item 10 on our agenda, our year-end risk management report 23-24, and review of the council's top risks. This always feels like such a massive subject that we kind of just go through quickly, like a lot of these papers are actually. But anyway, and I'll ask Scott. It's pages 123 to 154 in your papers, and I'll ask Scott to speak to this again, please. Thank you.
Thanks again, Chair. So this is the normal report that we bring to the committee that provides a year-end update on our risk management activity for 23-24, and also an update on the Council's top risk register after review this year. The addition in this report this time round is that we've also undertaken a review of the Council's risk management strategy, so I'll give some brief details on that. As section 4 of the report, that covers resource compliance with the risk management strategy, so you'll see there that resources continue to demonstrate full compliance, and that's backed by the compliance statement excuse me, which is attached to Appendix 1 to the report. Section 5 covers progress and delivered actions to mitigate top risks, and you'll see there that 94.4% has been achieved against an overall target of excuse me, 90%. The main part of the report, the results of the review and the proposed amendments to the Council's top risk register, is covered at Section 6. So 2 new risks are being added to the register this time round. The first of those is that the Council inherits commercially unviable shopping centres, and the second one is that the Council fails to comply with its statutory duty in conducting robust impact assessments. Just other changes to the risk register follow on in that section, so you'll see that scores have increased on 5 risks, and just running through them, you've got the provision of accommodation risk has gone from 16 to 20. The Council recently declared a housing emergency. The climate change risk has increased from 16 to 20, and that is mainly to reflect funding constraints and difficulties meeting targets. Fraud, theft, organised crime and cyber attacks has also gone up from 12 to 20. Our head of IT has confirmed that appropriate controls are in place, but notes that the threat landscape remains very active with no sign of easing, particularly around cyber attacks. The IGB risk has also gone up from 16 to 20, again in connection with budget shortfalls and significant demand pressures. There are, sorry, but I was about to come on to risk scores that have gone down. Sorry, there's one other that's gone up, and that is the adverse weather risk, which we spoke about in the previous paper. So that's gone from a 9 to a 16. We are seeing more frequent issues, property damage and storms and burst pipes are the main reason for that. The scores that have gone down on the register are for the fire service unwanted fire alarm signals policy. So that's gone from a score of 16 down to 9. That policy came into effect July last year. We've had no significant issues. The main risk is around property because it's non-domestic properties that are concerned. And we have looked at the number of fires out of hours, which for that type of property have been low. Schools also benefit from sprinkler systems to help mitigate that risk. The community wealth building risk score has come down from 16 to 9, and that risk score now aligns with other plans and strategies on the risk register. Benchmarking is covered at section 6 of the report, and you will see there's 2 pieces of benchmarking work that we've looked at. One is through Yvonne's side of the house on the Chief Internal Auditors Group, and the second one is a report that's been undertaken by Aon Global Risk Management. The main message we're getting across here is that the vast majority of the risk covered through these benchmarking exercises are on our own top risk register. So that does provide some comfort that the Council's understanding of the current and future risk landscape is in line with other public sector bodies. Just moving on, the scope and appetite of risk is covered at section 10 of the report. So this looks at the number of sort of rankings of risks in different risk categories. So you'll see broadly we're looking at a split of 60% in the high bracket and 40% in the very high bracket for the Council's top risk register. That's slightly higher than the level that we had last year, but I would comment that it's not unusual in the current climate where possible we are encouraging that further mitigations are implemented. Just moving on to the Council's risk management strategy. So we did undertake a review of the strategy this year, and the main changes that I wanted to bring to the committee's attention are that, firstly, the risk matrix categories that I mentioned, your low, medium, high and very high risks, have been revised. Basically, that's to help us improve prioritisation and focus mitigation on the higher scored risks. The other thing that we've done is amended our tolerance levels to provide a better balance on the previously set levels. Again, to acknowledge the fact in the current climate that we do require to accept a higher level of risk. So that kind of is the main points within that report, and we're asking that the committee note the compliance levels and the progress in delivering the Council's top risk actions, and also that the committee note the content of the revised risk register and the content of the risk management strategy. Again, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you again, Scott. Do we have any questions in the room for Scott in the report? Any online? No questions? No further questions for you, thank you. Sound like a judge there, don't I? No further questions. Thank you, another comprehensive piece of work. And this is another kind of, I find all the papers that come to this committee very interesting. Okay, in that case, I'd like to move for the committee to note the report.
Thank you, Scott. I'd like to second that report. And it is comprehensive. Thank you.
And that's the committee to note the report. Okay, so that brings us to the end of all the substantial reports we've been through today, which have been many and various. So I'll pass over to Elizabeth Ann to speak to the forward programme for future meetings, please.
Thank you, Chair. The committee is familiar with this report. It comes to each meeting of the committee, and the background is set out at section 3 of the report. The purpose of the report is to advise members of the forward programme for this committee, and in the case of this report, meetings are detailed up to the 30th of September 2025. And the programme is also detailed in the appendix. Members are also invited to suggest topics for inclusion in the committee's forward programme. And if I can take the committee back to the recommendation which is set out at paragraph 2.1, and that's to note the forward programme. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions for Elizabeth Ann? And remember, ideas for topics for inclusion are always welcome. Maybe once we've got our training, we'll have more thoughts on that. Okay, so thank you very much. I'd like to move the report and seek a seconder.
I'll second that report, Chair.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the meeting. There's no urgent business, and just to thank everyone who's been involved and the teams that have been involved in the massive amount of work that's gone into today's papers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.